I moved into my new apartment about 3 months ago. It was small, old, and a little rundown, but it was cheap and close to work. The first couple of weeks were normal, just me getting used to the creaky floors and thin walls. But then, the light in my bathroom started burning out way too often. At first, I thought it was just an old fixture, but I changed the bulb, and it lasted only a few days before dying again. This happened 3 more times, and by then, I was annoyed enough to call the landlord. He sent an electrician, who checked the wiring and said everything was fine. That night, I went to bed feeling uneasy. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I left the bathroom light on, not wanting to deal with another dead bulb in the morning. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to a loud popping sound. My heart jumped, and I instinctively reached for my phone. The bathroom light had gone out again. I sighed, assuming the bulb had just burned out like before. But then, I heard a faint tapping sound coming from the bathroom. It was rhythmic, like someone was lightly knocking on the mirror. I stayed in bed, my body tense. My apartment was small, so if someone had broken in, I would have heard them. The tapping continued, slow and deliberate. I finally got up, heart pounding, and grabbed the flashlight from my nightstand. As soon as I turned it on, the tapping stopped. I hesitated before stepping into the bathroom. The mirror was fogged up, which made no sense because I hadn't taken a shower. Then, right before my eyes, something appeared in the condensation. 3 small, perfectly drawn fingerprints. I backed out of the bathroom so fast that I nearly tripped over my own feet. My first thought was that maybe the mirror was just dirty, but the fingerprints were too precise, too fresh. I locked myself in my bedroom and stayed awake until morning. As soon as the sun came up, I checked the mirror again. The fingerprints were gone. Not smudged, not faded, just completely gone. I tried to convince myself I had imagined them, that maybe it was just a trick of the light. But I still felt uneasy. That night, I decided to keep the bathroom door closed. I replaced the light bulb again, and even wiped the mirror down with glass cleaner. By midnight, I was struggling to keep my eyes open. I had just started to drift off when a loud explosion jolted me awake. I jumped out of bed, my heart racing. The bathroom door was slightly open, and I could see glass scattered across the floor. The light bulb had exploded. My first instinct was to get out of the apartment. I grabbed my phone and ran to the front door, but when I tried to turn the handle, it wouldn't budge. The lock wasn't stuck, it felt like someone was holding it from the other side. Panic surged through me as I pulled harder, my hands shaking. Then, just as suddenly as it started, the resistance disappeared, and the door swung open with no issue. I spent the night at a friend's place, unwilling to go back. The next morning, I returned with my friend to grab some essentials. The apartment felt different. The air was heavy, like it hadn't been touched in years. When I stepped into the bathroom, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The mirror was cracked, a long jagged line running down the center. But the worst part, there were more fingerprints. Not just 3 this time, dozens of them, scattered across the glass like tiny hands pressing from the other side. I moved out a week later. I told my landlord it was because of the wiring issues, but deep down, I knew the truth. I never figured out what was happening in that bathroom. Maybe I don't want to. But sometimes, when I wake up in the middle of the night, I swear I can still hear that faint tapping sound. I had been working the night shift at the convenience store for almost a year, and nothing weird had ever happened, until a few weeks ago. It started with the flickering light in the back storage room. At first, I assumed it was just an old bulb, but every time I replaced it, it would start flickering again within a few hours. Sometimes, it would go out completely, leaving the back of the store in complete darkness. But the real problem wasn't the light. It was what happened when it turned off. One night, I was in the storage room restocking shelves when the bulb flickered twice and died. I sighed, pulling out my phone to use as a flashlight. That's when I heard it, soft, shuffling footsteps just behind me. I froze, my pulse spiking. The storage room was small, and I was alone. Or at least, I thought I was. Slowly, I turned around, shining my phone's light across the shelves. Nothing. But the air felt wrong, thick, heavy, charged with something I couldn't explain. I told myself I was imagining things, finished my task as quickly as possible, and left the room. But from that night on, the feeling didn't go away. Every time I passed the storage room, I felt like someone was watching me from the darkness. Customers started complaining too. They'd glance at the back of the store and frown, like they'd seen something move. One guy even asked me, "Hey, do you know there's someone standing back there?" When I turned to look, the storage room was empty. A few nights later, I was in the middle of a quiet shift when the entire store lights flickered and went out. The emergency lights kicked in, casting an eerie red glow over the aisles. I was alone, completely alone, but I heard it, footsteps. Slow, deliberate, moving from the storage room toward the counter. My throat tightened. I grabbed the baseball bat we kept under the register and called out, "Who's there?" No answer. The footsteps stopped just a few feet away from me. I could feel something standing there, just out of sight, just beyond the dim emergency lights. I reached for my phone, but before I could turn on the flashlight, the bulb above my head exploded with a deafening pop. Glass rained down on the counter, and I ducked instinctively. When I looked up, the emergency lights flickered again, and for just a second, I saw it, a shadowy figure standing at the entrance to the storage room. It was tall, unnaturally tall, with no features, just a mass of darkness shaped like a person. I don't remember running, but the next thing I knew, I was outside, gasping for air. The store was silent, the lights inside completely dead. When the manager arrived an hour later, everything was back to normal, except for the broken light bulb behind the counter. I tried to explain what happened, but he just shrugged and told me to take the rest of the night off. I never went back for another shift. I quit the next day. I don't know what I saw in that storage room, but I know one thing for sure. When the lights go out in that store, something else wakes up. And I don't want to be there when it does. I moved into my new apartment a few months ago. It wasn't anything special, just a small, one-bedroom unit in an old downtown building. The rent was cheap, and the landlord warned me about the old wiring, saying I might experience some flickering lights. At first, I barely noticed it. The bathroom light would flicker when I turned it on, but it always stopped after a few seconds. I chalked it up to the building's age. But then, bulbs started burning out at an alarming rate. Not just in the bathroom, but all over the apartment, the kitchen, the hallway, even my bedside lamp. I replaced them, but within days, they'd blow out again. The electrician I called checked everything, and said the wiring was fine. Probably just a bad batch of bulbs, he shrugged. I wanted to believe that, but something felt off. One night, as I was getting ready for bed, my bedroom lamp flickered violently before going dark. I sighed, mentally adding another light bulb to my shopping list. But before I could set my phone down, the overhead light switched on by itself. My stomach twisted. I hadn't touched the switch. I sat up, staring at the light. Then, as if someone was standing right next to it, flicking it up and down, it started turning on and off in rapid succession. My breath caught in my throat. The erratic blinking cast eerie shadows across my walls, making everything in the room feel distorted. I forced myself to move, reaching for the switch to turn it off manually. The moment my fingers touched it, every single light in the apartment shut off at once. Total darkness swallowed me. The only sound was my own breathing, until I heard something else. A soft, slow scratching noise. It was coming from the bathroom. My skin prickled. It wasn't just some random creaking. It was deliberate. Long, drawn-out scrapes, like nails dragging against wood. Then a faint click, the bathroom light turned on. But I hadn't replaced that bulb. It had been dead for weeks. A sickly yellow glow spilled from the crack under the door. I stared, heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. The scratching grew louder. Then the doorknob rattled. Slowly at first, like someone testing if it was locked. Then violently, as if something was trapped inside and desperate to get out. My legs refused to move. I wanted to convince myself it was some kind of electrical malfunction, but deep down I knew better. This wasn't just a wiring issue. There was something in there. The bulb inside the bathroom flickered wildly, shadows shifting under the door. Then, with a loud pop, it shattered. Glass clinked against the tiles, and once again, I was plunged into darkness. But this time, the silence didn't last. A deep, guttural whisper came from the bathroom, so low I could barely make out the words. It was muttering something. My body finally responded. I stumbled back, heart hammering. The whispering grew more insistent, and then, suddenly, the door creaked open just an inch. That was all I needed. I ran. I bolted out of my apartment without grabbing my shoes, my keys, nothing. My feet slapped against the cold hallway floor as I tore down the stairs. I didn't stop until I was outside, standing in the middle of the empty street, gasping for air. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely pull out my phone. I wanted to call someone, anyone, but what would I even say? Hey, my bathroom light is haunted. I stayed outside until the sun came up. Even then, I didn't go back inside alone. I convinced a friend to come with me. The apartment felt different in the daylight, but that eerie sense of wrongness still lingered. My friend laughed, said I probably dreamed the whole thing. But when I opened the bathroom door, I knew I hadn't imagined it. The shattered bulb was still on the floor, tiny shards of glass reflecting the morning light. But that wasn't what made my stomach drop. Scratched into the wood of the bathroom door, deep, jagged marks that hadn't been there before, were 3 words. "Let me out." My friend stopped laughing. I didn't say another word. I just packed my things and left that same day. I didn't even ask for my deposit back. I just wanted out. I don't know who or what was in that apartment. I don't want to know. But sometimes when I pass by that building, I glance up at my old window. And every now and then, even in broad daylight, I swear I see the bathroom light flicker.